Go. So, hey, I'm Jamie. Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. It was fantastic, Lee, to invite me to come along to this. I'm a product designer, like many of you are. I currently work in the mortgage space and have done for the last 2 years, but working in sort of user-centered design since 2018. But I've been attending these kind of events for like the last 10 odd years. And again, they've been crucial. They've been, like James said, they're an incredible part of the design, the design community in Manchester in helping people to sort of grow and develop in their career. And they're wonderful. I wouldn't be where I am in my career without them. So it's really nice to be up here now to speak to people and try and share the knowledge and share the experiences that I've had before. That being said, I've never really had the urge to kind of step up and give a talk. I never felt like I've had anything sort of original to say or anything new to say, but that kind of sort of changed with. Has that changed? No, that's not changed. I'm in the wrong bit, I think. Yeah, here we go. Right, there we go. That changed when this went up on LinkedIn. So Lee put up, or I assume Lee put up this talking about design crits, and yeah, right, good. So Lee put this up, talk about design crits, and thought it'd be a really great idea to start off in Manchester, like bring the community together, bring our work in, share it, get the feedback necessary that will help us to improve. And I thought, yeah, that's an absolutely a great idea. That's fantastic. I've done a lot of work in helping the companies I've worked at to develop their crit process, and it turns out I had a lot of opinions about that, and it actually kind of sparked something in me, and Lee sort of reached out and said, you're clearly passionate about this. Do you want to sort of talk about it and help us sort of define the process of getting this on, as a session? So that's what we're going to sort of discuss for this part of the session anyway. And like I said, it's something that I've come to realise I'm really, really passionate about, and sort of hopefully we'll get into that in a minute. But great design sort of really, it never happens on its own. I think we all know, like being the type of designers that we are, that great design comes to fruition through a collaborative process, right? And it's a massive, massive cliche, but it is so for a reason that, the people around us help us to come to better outcomes. So just fair warning, post-it notes. Yeah, I think it's a requirement, right? But your peers, the people that you work with day in, day out, even if you work remotely, they're so important. They're often the first users of our designs. I know we often say like we're not the users, but they're the first people to see our designs, who we share them with. And their opinions and the things they have to say about our work is really, really important. It plays a crucial part in sanity checking our work and our processes. And just sort of helping us to develop our design rationale as well. It's an opportunity to share learnings, to share experience, and ultimately it leads to better outcomes. So, sorry, there we go. My notes haven't gone through with that. Anyway, so it leads to stronger outcomes. First and foremost, by sharing your work, you're sharing it, you're giving visibility to your work. So some of us work in larger organisations. It's really important to sort of share what you're working on. If anything else, it's like, here's what I'm working on. Here's why it's important. Here's why we're doing this thing. Because of that, you get the opportunity to talk to your peers about their own experiences in similar spaces. You get to share sort of similar research, or you sort of say, oh yeah, we did a project like that this year before you started. Here's the results. Saves you massive amounts of legwork. You get colleagues who can share their own experiences. I work in the mortgage industry, so whenever I speak to someone, I can talk to them about their own mortgage processes, and the same when you're at work as well. You get input from other disciplines. So if you're in a cross-functional team, you're a UX designer, you've got a UX researcher in the room, hopefully got a content designer in the room. You have all these different roles who can share their perspectives, and that's a really, really important part in a crit session, to get that perspective from other people. But it goes a bit further than that, because it can also lead to an improved design culture and help you to develop as a designer as well. So being in that space and sharing your work helps sort of challenge those unconscious bias. It helps people to sort of say, have you considered this from an accessibility point of view? It helps to identify development opportunities. So if you've got someone that comes in that's maybe sort of a bit weaker on one discipline or the other, okay, great. Well, this is how I can potentially help you, or I got an idea that can potentially help you. It helps you sort of talk about things from a consistency point of view. So if you sort of think, okay, well, I've done a similar pattern to that, or this already exists in our design system, again, saving you time, saving you work. And the very sort of act of getting up in front of people or sitting in a room and giving your feedback helps you to develop your soft skills, helps you develop your communication skills, and articulate your design in that way, and even sort of some parts of stakeholder management. Lastly, sort of receiving some great feedback, or receiving just any kind of constructive feedback, can really help to refresh and energize you in what you're doing. You may sort of come up against a wall where you're not sure what to do, or you feel like you're going around in circles. I don't know if you've ever been in a position where you're sort of like essentially just moving one pixel left and right for the whole afternoon. Put your work in front of people. It completely helps to refresh you and get a new perspective on what you're working on. So just to cover my experience very sort of briefly, I kind of skipped over this at the beginning because I thought it would lead a bit well into why design critics and feedback can be so difficult. So I finished up uni with a pretty terrible degree in a really kind of woody subject. But because I was really super involved in the student union, I managed to blag myself a job as a student union officer, which is an elected position. So that was great. I got a job after uni, but there I had to learn how to use design software to put together a student union magazine. So I'm very much a self-taught designer in that, which was really helpful when I went on to sort of move into marketing roles. And eventually in about 2012, got my first actual proper design job. Around about the same time that I started coming to these meetups, because I just wanted to be around other designers, learn from them, and sort of try and improve myself and grow in that way. Because I'd always worked in smaller marketing teams as a solo designer and really had no one else to work from. That wasn't until sort of around about, again, 2018, I felt like I was good enough to start applying for these sort of UX jobs and these tech roles and things like that. And it kind of felt like, well, I was watching these people speak. I was like, well, I do that in my job. I can now go and work in these bigger design teams and learn from people. So there, I managed to blag myself a role at my supermarket. As you see, massive design team. I was suddenly surrounded by UX designers, UI designers, UX writers, researchers, content writers, and sort of actual proper design leadership for the first time ever. And it was so overwhelming, but so exciting. I felt like a total fraud. We talk about imposter syndrome a lot, and it hit really, really hard. But it was just such an amazing opportunity that I just threw myself into everything that was there, because I'd worked so long on my own as a designer that I was like, right, I just need to learn from these people. I need to be a sponge. So shortly after joining, they restarted their own crit sessions at the time based on Pixar's brain trust ritual, which I don't know if you heard about or anything. It's quite an interesting concept. It's in Ed Catmull's book, Creativity Incorporated, which is a fantastic read. During that first session, our head of design was late in turning up. So just out of pure awkwardness, I kind of started it. And that was it. It was mine now. It was my responsibility going forward. Yeah, so for the next 4 years, that was me. I was running what we called our brain trust sessions. So we didn't call them crits, which I think is actually a terrible term. It's horribly scary. It's not a nice word. We called them our brain trust sessions, and it was an experience where we had lots of ups and downs. There were times where I felt like this isn't worth it anymore. I just kind of want to jack it in and just focus on my actual job. But I really believed in sort of the power that they were given. I thought, well, there is something here. We went through huge changes. We had, teams across the country. We had COVID. We were all out of the office, and all of a sudden we were back in the office for quite a bit. So that's kind of where I'm going to draw on the majority of my experience, where we talk about crits and feedback sessions and stuff like that today. Because, right now I'm working for a much smaller team, and we still try to bring, those principles in that I'm going to sort of discuss today. So why are crits or feedback sessions so difficult? I don't think anything I'm going to say is going to be a huge revelation right now. We know feedback is important, you know, but we don't always practice what we preach, right? Why isn't it a core part of our design culture? It may be for some of you, you know, but I know for lots that it kind of ebbs and flows. Unless you have someone sort of leading it and truly committed to it, it can kind of dip and dive. And even with someone leading on it, it can still do that. But first and foremost, asking for feedback is really, really scary. That's the plain simple fact of it, right? You're intentionally opening yourself up for criticism. It's a deliberate act in making yourself vulnerable, and it's a horrible experience, right? Like you're saying, especially designers, right? Like we put a lot of ourselves into our work. It's a creative act, and creativity is deeply, deeply personal. So then all of a sudden, you're sort of asking people to sort of disagree with you, essentially, because, you know, to try and improve yourself, to try and get a better outcome. It's horrible. Like I say, yeah, it's really, really hard. But the act of making yourself vulnerable is in itself a skill. And you need a safe space to practice those skills, to be able to develop and build up your resiliency. And it happens to everyone. Like everyone's scared to put work back. I mean, I'm scared to give this presentation and speak on my own experiences. You get heads of designs who have faced imposter syndrome as well. It's horrible. Like I say, we're all naturally empaths. That's why we do what we do, and we're horribly aware of our surroundings. So, you know, the minute you accept that, but also acknowledge that doing it is in itself building a skill, it becomes a bit easier to do. Lastly, a crit session or feedback session is only ever as good as its participants. Otherwise, you're just talking to each other for an hour for no reason whatsoever. Like, it's pointless. And again, that's really, really hard. It can feel like a slog to get people to attend, to get them booked in, to find a room available if you do it in person. Again, it's hard work. You hear from people like, you know, oh no, my work's not ready yet. I'm not ready to do it yet, or oh, I've got nothing on right now, or like, oh, it's already gone in production. It's all right. I don't need any feedback. And sometimes that is the case, you know. But like I said, sharing just for the sake of sharing is still really, really important. Other times you'll have deadlines and people who are stacked, mad busy. Sorry, I'm too busy to attend today. And once you get like 2, 3, or 4 of those, suddenly you've just got 2 of you in a room, and again, pointless. And again, that really sort of impacts morale, and it impacts sort of the energy that you have in the room. You want people to want to come to this. You want people to see it as a valuable thing to do that, you know, potentially not looking forward to, but sort of you're not looking for a reason not to attend, right? So it needs to provide that value first and foremost. So yeah, just to summarize up there, you know, crits are hard. They're hard to get off the ground. They're hard to get people to engage. But you know, those for me, those are the main barriers I've found for why they dip and they drop and they don't sort of get the traction they want. But I don't kind of want to focus too much on why they don't work. Instead, I want to focus on sort of how you can make them work, how you can make them engaging, beneficial, and really, like I said, a core part of the design culture is they do become unmissable. So yeah, we're going to go through sort of 3 core parts of the feedback cycle, really, which is first and foremost the ability to ask for feedback. What does that involve? Giving the actual feedback. Again, I don't think any of this is massively sort of new, but then again, how do you receive the feedback? And this all sounds like really, really simplistic, but I promise you understand like what goes into these 3 sort of key interactions of a feedback cycle. Then suddenly you're in the midst of like a completely awesome conversation about the thing you're working on or the thing someone else is working on, and you have a really, really engaged audience because, you know, I'll go through it. But the art of feedback, like I say, it's a 2-way street, right? It doesn't just start with, it's not just you giving feedback, you know, unsolicited advice and things like that. No one wants that. We want people to come to us and ask for it. And I'm sure like people have heard lots of like tips and tricks about sort of how to give feedback, like the shit sandwich and stuff like that. But ultimately, how you ask for feedback is just important as how you give it, right? And what you ask for will dictate how you ask for a question for feedback will dictate the feedback you get. So vague questions, like I say, will lead to vague answers, and any researchers in the room will know that, right? Asking the right question is key. It's an art in itself. Ask vague questions, you're gonna get a vague answer. Like, have you ever turned to someone and said, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And they just go, "Yeah, all right." That's because you've asked a really, really vague question, so you've got a really, really vague answer. So you need to be specific, and I'm going to say that word a lot, so I better get it right. in what you're asking for, like in a feedback session. Turn up and just go in, feedback please. Everyone's just going to sort of twiddle their thumbs. But it's not enough to just ask those sort of broad questions. You need to be specific about what you're trying to get out of that feedback. Like, I'm not sure about this section, I'm not sure about this interaction, it feels like this to me, I'm not too sure, like tell me what your opinions. You know, you need to kind of evaluate your own work before going to a crit session to figure out, okay, what am I not sure about? What are my concerns? What am I hoping to get out of presenting this work? And that can really be helped by sort of setting the scene, right? And again, just saying feedback please isn't enough. You've got to give the context. You've got to frame the problem you're solving. And because people can't give you feedback unless they understand the why behind our designs. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve? Like, what are we trying to do for our users? So you come prepared, you're saying, right, here's what we're doing, here's the goal, here's why we're doing it, here's the goal, here's what research has told us already. You know, here's the feedback we've had from stakeholders already. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. So give them that. It's really easy to skip that step because your colleagues work in the same business as you, so it's easy to make assumptions that they already know kind of what you're working on. So you're right, okay, well, I'll skip that bit. Especially if you feel like you're under pressure to do it in a certain time. You won't, setting the full context won't sort of diminish the type of feedback you get, because if you run out of time, you just take it offline, you take it into another conversation. The context is already there, so you can carry on the conversation. So just don't assume your colleagues know everything, right? Because they're working on their own stuff. You're neck deep in it, day in, day out. You know the ins and outs of it. You've got to share that knowledge and that context with your audience. Part of that sort of evaluation process is identifying what stage in the process you're at, so you can ask for the right kind of feedback. You know, if you're just doing, you're on basic wires or just doing a general sort of interaction flow at a time, you don't want people to be picking up on sort of visual design or typos at that point, right? It's just not relevant then. Likewise, if you're presenting high fidelity designs, you don't really want to sort of picking the whole concept apart because you're way past that already. So when you're, so be specific what type of, like, you know, I'm looking for feedback on the content right now or the copy, or I'm looking for feedback on sort of the visual design, which states that sort of the detail of feedback should be proportional to the percentage of project completeness. So if a project is only 30% complete, your feedback should sort of match that really. You know, and sort of, like I say, don't be picking out typos when you're in the middle of it, sort of right at the start of it. Be picking out typos like when it's just about to be coded, right? And lastly, sort of on this subject, it's, you know, you won't, like I said, you won't always have things to share. Weeks will be quiet, and it happens, right? Like you get to some, like you think, all right, I'm in the middle of projects in a minute, or I'm just doing this little itty bitty stuff that kind of doesn't really warrant. That's okay, right? If it's just gone live, go and take that with you. Right, this has just gone live. Here's what we expect. Here's how we're measuring success. Here's what we go do as a follow up, right? And then, you know, you might even get feedback on your process, or, you know, well, actually, you consider this doing any follow up. Likewise, you might be in a position where you're about to kick off a piece of work, and then you can maybe, again, come to people and talk about your process, how you're going to approach this work. Start to get some input from people who have maybe done something similar, or, like I say, sharing research or sharing designs that have been done before. Totally okay. Take a research plan. Like, here's what we plan to do. What do you think of this? And other times there might be a case where, you know, you're having issues with a stakeholder potentially, or struggling to get buy-in from stakeholders. And again, talking to your peers and saying, look, I'm having an issue. How would you approach this, or how have you approached this in the past? Again, they can really generate some really great conversations. Again, yeah. So yeah, that's asking for feedback. But the beefy part, right, is giving the feedback. You're in a crit session, a colleague's presented something and asked for your feedback. And while it's not as scary to give feedback, it's certainly challenging, right? It's emotionally and intellectually sort of quite challenging. And you've got to sort of think about, okay, well, let me think about this properly. I really want to give valuable feedback. Like, that in itself is like, takes effort and is quite challenging. So how can we make that process less draining and more valuable? First and foremost, right? Don't do it. Goes without saying. Don't be antagonistic. And I know I'm talking to the wrong crowd here about this because we're UX designers and that automatically makes us like wonderful people. But like, I was talking to my brother-in-law who works he's a product guy, and he had just finished a project with a company, and there was a guy there that he was working with, and he was really, really passionate about his reputation of being a dick, of being difficult to work with. Like, it's a badge of honor for him, like that he sort of tells it like it is. And you know that's a massive red flag when someone says that, right? So just don't do it. It's not impressive, and it's toxic and counterproductive. Our aim as design team should be creating a safe space, and it's such an overused term, but it's so important. We want our people to feel psychologically safe, so they can bring their work to us, they can be themselves, they can be authentic, they can sort of tell us how they're really feeling, and we can kick that imposter syndrome out the door. Because like I say, the more you practice vulnerability, the more you'll build up your resilience. So as I say, create a psychologically safe space where people can be authentic, they can be themselves. Again, it's about being specific again. When you're giving feedback, be direct. You want to avoid ambiguity at all costs and remove any chance of interpretation. And it's, again, massively stealing from Kim Scott, who wrote the Radical Candor book, but it really is the foundation of giving solid advice. You need to challenge directly. But in doing so, you need to show support and kindness and show that you really do care about the individual, their work they're doing on, and be invested in their own growth as well. Now, we all implicitly sort of, I can't speak for everyone, I get along with my colleagues, I've got along with the majority of my colleagues, and I've always sort of cared about them. But there's times where it's kind of, that's implicit, right, and not actively shown. But in these sort of sessions, it needs to be actively shown that you care about that person. And again, the more you do it, and the more your relationships develop in this space, the more it'll be understood, okay, this person's given me some quite direct feedback, but that's okay because I know them and I know that they care about me. You know, that's the only way we can do it, is if we believe the person giving that feedback sort of truly believes in our own growth and our own development and showing that kindness and support. But in giving that direct feedback, you've got to give something to work with. You can't be just going like, I don't like that, man. Don't like it. How many times have you been with a stakeholder and they've said, I don't know what I like, but I'll know when I see it? Everyone heard that, right? How helpful is it? It's not helpful at all. Like, and again, it's like you don't want to be vague. Like vagueness, ambiguity, all these words I'm going to repeat over and over again. We don't want them. We want to be specific. We don't want to leave things open to interpretation. So give a rationale for your feedback, offer up solutions, give direction or ideas for the next step. Again, as the person receiving the feedback, you don't always have to take it, you know, note it down, consider it. And there'll be times we say, yeah, I've already tried that. Thank you very much. What really helps to kind of take away that personal attachment of feedback is by relating it to like some kind of established framework. Right, so principles of visual design, if you have your own internal design principles, or even like WCAG or resources like Nielsen Norman, like if you can attach your feedback to sort of something that's well established, it helps to take away that personal aspect of it. Because, you know, when we worked at my supermarket, like we had pillars for design, can't remember what they are now, and we had like design principles for the brand at the time around like clarity and confidence. Does this help create clarity? Does this help to create confidence? Asking those questions that are attached to your design principles can be super, super helpful in, if anything, just igniting the conversation. We had these things. We had our design principles that we got printed out on cards, like little A5 cards, A6 cards, and during the start of the session, they would get distributed to people. And it was their job to sort of go, right, I'm the person who's going to talk about accessibility. I'm the one who's going to talk about this. And it gives, again, a reason to start talking about something if it's relevant. So again, as an audience person, you've watched the feedback, they've hopefully set the context, but you still might have questions. You might want to sort of dig deeper in something, and that is okay. In some cases, it might be difficult to put your hand up. They might have missed something during the sort of the context setting. Again, safe space. You can probe answers. You can ask clarifying questions. You can help guide that feedback with your questions. Asking, firstly start off like, are there any areas that you're unsure about when you present this design? And you can help them identify what type of feedback they're looking for, if they haven't considered it already. Again, it can really unlock those ideas or inspire, the next line of thinking. So yeah, asking it's a pretty useless exercise if you're not going to sort of do anything with it, really. So if you ask them for feedback, and if you're just going to ignore it all, then what's the point? You're just doing it for the sake of it. The best advice really about receiving feedback is practice. Over time, our skins harden, our resilience builds, we get better at taking that advice on board, and we know what to do with it, right? But there are a few things that we could sort of do in the short term, right? Which is, first and foremost, don't take it personally. Now, if someone is being a dick, and they are being personal, then you have full right to take it personally, right? And there are HR policies for that. And like I said, we put a lot into our design. I come from a graphic design background as well, where design is maybe a little bit more subjective and less sort of user-informed. So to hear the thing that you thought was really great be sort of torn apart, sucks. But if it's done in a really constructive way, it's easier not to take it so personally. Like I said, creativity is deeply personal, and it's okay to feel a bit shit if someone does dislike your design. But in doing it in a bad way, it's okay. Even if they do it in a great way, it's okay to feel a bit shit about that. But if we want to grow, we need to sort of learn to not take it as personally, right? And we need to find that balance between our feelings that are connected to that design and the overall objective of that design. So you want to be able to detach yourself just enough from it that you can see the benefit of the feedback. You don't want to attach yourself too much, because you want to maintain your passion and your motivation for what you're doing. Otherwise, you just become apathetic, and then no one wants to sort of just be like, oh, fuck. Feelings are good and they motivate us. We want to keep those feelings going, but too much of attachment to it, again, will get those feelings hurt, and you don't want either of those situations. So, like I said earlier, we're not the users, right? And we get told that constantly. We need to remember that as well, because we're designing for a particular set of users with specific problems, and we're looking to unlock a solution to that problem. We don't have to like what we've done. I've done plenty of designs before that I've not liked, and I thought, but they've worked, right? We've achieved the deal, we've achieved the goal at hand, it moves the metrics, fine, whatever. So yeah, find that balance, I think, is real key. And in doing so, you need to understand that there's a difference between personal preference and what sort of constructive criticism. And especially with your stakeholders as well. So I think you're going to get more of those personal comments from your stakeholders who probably don't have the design vocabulary that your peers do. And again, you'll get those things, oh, I don't like green. What's our brand color? We can't not use it. So you got to sort of have ways to navigate those conversations. And then what is actually genuine feedback based on, design principles of visual design or whatever. Because those personal preferences, we can just ignore, right? Or just say, okay, we'll test it, and then not test it. Our stakeholders, and sometimes maybe our junior colleagues who are new, they don't have the right words to describe their opinions. And it's part of our job to help them understand how to describe what they feel about design. Like, again, over the years of being a designer, you build up a certain sort of design language. You're able to rationalize your design, and you have a vocabulary that you can fall back on and say, I'm looking at a design, what do I like about it, what do I not? It's part of our job to help our colleagues and our stakeholders understand that language and help them sort of communicate in the same way that we do, so we're aligned, and we're progressing our design maturity in our organizations. So there's some things I learned over sort of my career, and some advice that I've given to other people looking to improve their own crit sessions. I've probably missed absolutely loads, and happy to talk and take questions later about those. But I just want to sort of quickly go over sort of how you can implement like a healthy culture of feedback in your own organization and make sort of your crits more productive, and again, make them unmissable. And I'm maybe being a bit optimistic with that, but yeah, that's what I believe in. So firstly, as a group, you need to establish some ground rules for what a crit session or feedback session is going to be. Some ground rules, don't be a dick, rule number 1. Lay out some expectations of what you expect of people to do and how they should run, and at the beginning of each session, you should iterate those rules. You should go over them again, right? Same if you've got any design principles, right? These are rules for a crit session. Here are our design principles. Every single time, you're going to repeat them because they're important. And you have new people starting, and new people join not been before. Every time they need to get reiterated. And hopefully it'll allow everyone over time to relax and focus on the positive outcomes. Each session should ideally have a facilitator, so you need someone keeping things moving, keeping on the time, ensuring everyone has a voice. We've all been in rooms where there's one very, very loud voice, and then probably maybe one quiet voice. Those opinions are equally valid, and you need to balance them as a facilitator. It doesn't always have to be the same person, and you rotate this. And in fact, you should probably rotate this because it, again, is a good development opportunity for people to improve their soft skills. You need to figure out who's going to present ahead of time. If you just rock up to an office or join online and say, right, who's got stuff? You're going to get like a dead crowd. You need to sort of be proactive in this and contact people beforehand. And again, it's hard work. You want a schedule lined up beforehand of who's going to be speaking, and get them prepared, help them evaluate their work, like I say, understand the context and that they're going to be set in and the feedback that they want. And then appoint a note taker. Getting up and receiving feedback, again, is really, really scary. You've also then got to note down all the feedback that's going on while trying to engage with that person and write down this. It can't be done. Get someone to take down the notes and then distribute them afterwards so we can all progress from it. Establish a format and understand what sort of cadence you want to do. If you want weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. Figure out what you want to do and how you're going to sort of do it, and then just do it. All right. Don't spend too much time figuring out the format, but get one sorted. Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be online? What whiteboarding tool are you going to use? Just get some frames on and start doing it. And then create sort out who's going to be there. This will be down to the individual teams in the same way that, how you choose to sort of do, how often you do it and how it's got a format. When we first started doing it at Money Supermarket, it was just designers, right? And we didn't include the creative team or the CRM team. We also had designers. But over time, we felt like it was important to include them for visibility, for collaboration. So they joined. Sometimes we invited the PMs on the odd time just to see like how that works. But you might have different type, huge departments, people across the world. It's going to be different, right? You want enough people to give a varying viewpoints, but not so much it becomes difficult to facilitate, okay? And that's just going to come with time, how you balance that. One trick I found in getting good turnout is to try and get someone on your side, on their side, right? So if you're organizing things, you want to get like a popular designer, someone who's well respected, get their buy-in, and then they can be sort of rally the troops from the other side, right? And they can be that person to kind of get that energy going. And again, you've got to try things. You've got to kind of roll with it and adapt and be flexible with things, because again, things work until they don't. You need to try new things. It's complete trial and error where, what you start with will be completely different in 6 months' time, and embrace that. Always check with your team and make sure, you're giving value. Treat it like a product, right? Do your user research. Is this giving you the value you need? And we did that sort of maybe once every 6 months or 12 months as well. Is this still kind of value to you? Why aren't you attending? Or what do you get out of it? At Money Supermarket, I went through so many iterations and tried so many different things, making it less structured, then making it more structured, randomly selecting participants to sort of present their work. Some things worked, some things didn't. We went online and then we tried doing sort of breakout groups because we had a much larger team then. And, you just got to try these things and realize that, okay, at some point things are going to maybe slump a little bit. Let's try something new. But I promise you the perseverance of it will be well worth it, because by the time I left Money Supermarket, it was a thing that people enjoyed going to. But yeah, ultimately you've got to make it fun, and you don't, it doesn't mean like, woo, games. It's like, no, make it like something that's enjoyable to be at. It has to be worth going to. So you need to make it engaging, you need to make it fun, it's useful. In addition to like an actual crit, right? And it's a great way to sort of better understand your colleagues. Again, at a time when I was doing it, we had like a lot of new starters joining, so we thought it'd be a really good idea for them to do like a Pecha Kucha. So like a bit of an intro presentation at maybe sort of like their fourth brain trust. And it worked amazingly well. People enjoyed doing the presentations, because people love talking about themselves, because it was a safe space. And we ran out of new starters. So then we just started doing the rest of the team. And the amount I learned about my colleagues in those few months was amazing. But yeah, so again, to summarize, if there's 3 things I kind of want to take away tonight, it's, again, I've said it so many times, be specific. In asking for feedback and giving feedback, we want to avoid ambiguity and vagueness. Again, safe space, said it lots. We can only give that helpful feedback if we have a space to be candid and honest in and feel like ourselves. And lastly, when you're setting up your own crits, make sure you keep adapting to the needs of your team and doing what works for them. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to say. As I mentioned earlier, I do help. I didn't mention it, but I help out with Ladies UX. So sorry, Lee, but I'm getting a plug in. I help out volunteering with Ladies UX, and we have our next event on the 17th. I'm on Twitter, X, and LinkedIn if you want to connect. I mostly talk about hip hop and pro wrestling. And then LinkedIn, where I do the same, but maybe less swearing. So again, happy to take any questions. I'm not sure if I've gone over time or under, I don't know. Apologies. We good? Yeah.